Hello all. Before we begin the video, let's discuss CloudFoundation. CloudFoundation is the premier online training platform to help individuals and organizations gain knowledge and skills in the ever-growing cloud computing industry.
So guys, this is what we are going to learn in the next 30 session. Okay. We have some new folks who are freshers. We have some experienced guy. So this course content will be suitable for both of them. So now in the first session, we are going to talk about all the IAM concepts basically. Because before getting to Sailpoint, you should know what is IAM. We can talk about Sailpoint, that's fine, but you should know what is IAM as well. So without understanding these IAM concepts and fundamentals of IAM, we cannot start. Okay, so we'll talk about what is IAM, why do we require, what is the purpose behind that. Okay, everything we'll talk about that. So once we talk about IAM, we'll talk about Sailpoint advantages and all. Okay, what is the advantages of having Sailpoint rather than having other IAM tools like Savient. Instead of Sailpoint, we could have, the client could have chosen Savient, Okta, SunIDM, some other solution tool, right? IAM solution tool. So what is the advantages we are having in Sailpoint? We'll talk about that. So after that chapter, we'll talk about the software and hardware requirement, because you may get a chance to implement Sailpoint on real-time project. So in that scenario, you are going to design the architecture, okay, as an architect, or not as a support engineer or a developer, but definitely you should have a knowledge. So how to implement Sailpoint? You have to design the architectural document. In that scenario, you should know what are the softwares are required, how you are going to define the hardware. It depends. So we'll talk about on a high level. Okay. So if you get a requirement, so which application server, what type of application server we are going to implement. So whether database server are required or not, from where we are going to gather the software, Sailpoint software, and how we are going to decide, okay, this much RAM is enough, this much CPSP is required, these many servers are required. So we'll talk about software and hardware requirements. In the next chapter, we'll talk about Sailpoint implementation, Sailpoint installation or else. It depends. In real-time project, no one is going to involve in this activity unless if you are part of the infrastructure team. Because in real-time project, infrastructure team will take care of this activity. But in your local machine, you are the one who is going to implement Sailpoint. So we will learn how to implement Sailpoint on your machine. In interviews also, they may ask how to install Sailpoint. So definitely you should know how to do that. Okay, guys, once we install Sailpoint in your local machine, maybe your laptop or your personal system, so it will be like a clean slate. Nothing will be there, okay, except some configuration file and except some object. So we need to, the ultimate purpose of implementing Sailpoint so that we can manage, maintain, track all the employee activity as well as their access. So it's all about identity management and their access management. So in that scenario, in order to perform that, you should onboard HR application first. So let's start with HR application onboarding. Nowadays, we have some advanced application like Workday, SuccessFactors, Employee Central, and PeopleSoft. So these four, I remember. We may have some advanced application too. So we will learn how to onboard this application, and we will learn the purpose behind the application onboarding very briefly. We are not going to onboard only HR application.
What is the meaning of onboarding? Means like how we correlate that?
That's a good question. So onboarding is nothing. It's a fancy word, I would say. It's a process. It's a process of integrating the application with Sailpoint.
Well, the same thing so like which you mentioned, Workday. That's integrating
exactly,
Workday.
Exactly. So we have to integrate Workday application with Sailpoint. So the entire process, we may call it as onboarding. Onboarding an application, onboarding Workday application, something like that. Okay. So the purpose, Sailpoint can aggregate the data. Sailpoint can consume those data so that we can manage in one place. It's like a unified portal, right? So we can manage everything with the help of Sailpoint. If you want to manage, let's imagine you don't have a Sailpoint in place and you want to manage all the user data. So each and every time you cannot rely on different application, right? So if you have a centralized system like Sailpoint, we can track, we can manage everything from Sailpoint. So that's the ultimate idea. You got it, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll talk about application onboarding very briefly. So how to onboard HR application. We may have some third-party applications. We may have some different type of application. How to onboard that, first of all. So once you onboard those application, how to aggregate the data. Aggregate is nothing. It's like a reconciliation, because now you have one end, you have a Sailpoint, another end you have a target application. The target application could be any application. So make sure Sailpoint will consume those data, which means we have to synchronize between both the platform, from target application to Sailpoint and Sailpoint to target application. Okay, so how to synchronize that, we'll talk about that. So once the application onboarding and the aggregation is done, okay, so once the application onboarding is done, we will talk about the access permission, like what is group, what is roles, what is entitlement, capabilities, how to manage them, how to monitor them, how to aggregate them, because sometimes, not sometimes, always, the groups and entitlements will be managed and created by application team, because they know their application very well. So they have already defined. So if any end user is looking for some basic access, then we have to assign this group. If anyone is looking for admin level access, then we have to assign this group. And some user may require for read only access, some user require for read and write access. It depends. So application team, definitely they would have created this access permission from their end. So most of the time Sailpoint will aggregate those group data, as we are going to aggregate the user data as well. So once we aggregate the group data, we can manage those groups. You may call it as entitlement capability. And sometimes Sailpoint is responsible to create those groups entitlement as well. Okay, due to some unforeseen situation, you may get requirement from stakeholder saying these entitlement needs to be created. You cannot say we won't create entitlement. The entitlement, most of the time, it will be created by application team. So definitely you should know how to create these entitlement as well. Are we clear so far? Anyone has any question?
No.
Guys, if you have any question, try to clarify right now, because this is what we are going to cover in the next 30 session, 25 to 30 session. Okay. So entitlement, it's fine. So once we have an entitlement, we will, in the next chapter, we are going to talk about roles. So what is role? What type of role we have in Sailpoint? So what type of role we are going to implement and which will be used by end users? Okay. So how to manage them, how to modify. So we'll talk about in that perspective. So once roles and entitlement chapters are done, we will talk about attributes. Attributes, what type of out-of-the-box attribute we have in Sailpoint. Okay. When I mean out of the box, what does that mean? Can any one of you explain? What is out of the box?
Something that's within Sailpoint, already present.
Something which
Okay.
comes from the tool.
Okay.
Which we are not adding anything.
Okay. So out of the box is nothing. It's an existing functionality. Whenever we are going to implement any software, any application, some default functionality, some default components will be there, right? So we may call it as out of the box functionality, out of the box object. It depends. Out of the box is nothing. It's an existing functionality, or whatever features comes as a default. Okay. Because when I used to work for Sailpoint initially, I thought out of the box means we have to think out of the box, which means it's related to customization. Okay. Out of the box means it's an existing functionality. I hope you guys are fine with the IAQ terminologies, maybe IAM terminologies. If no, just let me know right away. We'll have one more session to discuss about the IAQ terminologies. I mean, Sailpoint
Yeah,
IAQ terminologies.
yeah, I need like little bit of IAM terminology. Okay, I mean, I'm new to this one little bit.
Okay, because you should know what is entitlement, what is group, what is policy certification, what is work item, because we are going to discuss a lot about these terminologies, because I will use these phrases very often. So you should understand. The moment I'm going to say work item, so you should know what is work item. The moment I'm going to say managed attribute, bundle, role, entitlement, whatever it may be, you should understand. You should be in a place to understand. Okay, we'll have a session for that too.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll talk about attribute, what is out of the box attribute, and what is extended attribute. because based on these attributes, developers and other people, they are going to write some rule. Let's say we are going to perform some activity. That activity will be performed by client. Okay, let's take an example. Now, clients are saying we need to exclude these employees, maybe some finance department employee, or maybe Australian location employee. We should exclude them because we are not going to involve those people in this activity. As a developer, you have to write some rule to exclude them. So now here we have some attribute called department. We have some attribute called location. Based on these attribute, you are going to write some rule. Imagine a scenario if there is no attributes are available. So what will you do? You have to create on your own once you get the approval. So you should know how to create these attributes. Attributes are nothing, it's like a placeholder. We'll talk about that briefly. So as of now, try to understand. So we will learn how to create this custom attribute, or you may call it as extended attribute, and how to manage them and all, how to assign the values and all, we will learn. So once the attribute chapters are done, we will talk about task. So task is a backbone, I would say it's a backbone of Sailpoint, like automated provisioning and all. So it's one of the backbone of Sailpoint. So we will talk about what are the out of the box tasks we have, what type of task category we have in Sailpoint, how to create custom tasks, okay, and how to schedule these tasks, because each and every time the task has to be executed manually. If you want to automate this process, in that scenario, how to schedule these tasks so that whenever the particular time arrives, the task should get executed automatically without any manual intervention. So how to do that? How to change the time interval? We will talk about that briefly. And if you have a fresher, then definitely we should talk about how to monitor these tasks, because as a L1, L2 support engineer, you guys are going to monitor these tasks on a daily basis. This will be your primary job, primary task. So you should know how to monitor this task. If any task is going to end with failure or ended with warning, so what will be the next step? Are you going to capture the log? Are you how to do the troubleshoot? Okay, so something like that. So we will talk about this very briefly. Task and as well as report as well. So task and reports both belongs to the same category. We'll talk about that. Once task and reports are done, we'll talk about capability. Capability is nothing. So it's similar to entitlement.
And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.